My mother waited until everyone was watching, until the candles were lit, until 30 friends and relatives were gathered around my birthday cake. Then she stood up, raised her wine glass, looked me directly in the eye, and said 4 words that changed my life forever. I never loved you. At first I thought I had misheard her. Nobody laughed. Nobody smiled. The entire garden went silent. My aunt dropped her fork. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." And my mother just stood there, perfectly calm, as if she'd announced the weather forecast, instead of destroying her daughter in front of 30 people. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me, waiting for me to cry, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to run. But they had no idea what was about to happen next. Because in that exact moment, something inside me finally snapped. I stood up, smiled, looked my mother dead in the eye, and said thank you. A few hours later, she would learn that those 4 words were the biggest mistake of her life. The next morning, I woke up to 53 missed calls, but the one that changed everything wasn't from my mother. Before I go on, if you're listening, please take a moment to hit like and subscribe. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you are when you hear this. Now let me take you back 6 months to the day my mother called my boss. Briarfield, Connecticut is the kind of town where everyone waves at your car even if they don't know who's driving. 14,000 people, 1 main street, 2 churches, and a farmer's market every Saturday, where my mother holds court like it's her personal stage. Judith Andrews, 58 years old, vice chair of the Grace Baptist Women's Charitable League. The woman who brings the best casserole to every potluck. The woman who organizes the Christmas pageant, the spring gala, the 4th of July barbecue. Except she doesn't organize any of it. I do. I've been planning family events since I was 14. Menu cards at Thanksgiving for 22 guests. Seating charts at Christmas so Aunt Margaret wouldn't sit near Uncle Roy. Centerpieces made from Pinterest boards. I stayed up until 2 a.m., studying because my mother said the ones from last year looked cheap. I didn't know other 14-year-olds weren't hand-addressing invitations on a school night. My father, Gerald, 61, retired mechanical engineer, sat at the far end of every table I sat, reading glasses on newspaper folded to the crossword. If my mother told him to move the chairs, he moved the chairs. If she told him the napkins were wrong, he changed the napkins. If she told him I needed more practice, he nodded and said, "Your mother knows best." He loved me. I never doubted that. But his love came with a permanent asterisk. As long as it doesn't upset Judith. Here's the thing nobody tells you about growing up like this. You don't realize the skill you're building. You think you're being trusted. You think your mother sees something special in you, something worth leaning on. I thought I was being trusted. I was just being used. The event planning career I built, it didn't come from ambition. It came from survival. Let me show you how it worked. 3 Christmases ago, I spent 4 days prepping a dinner for 25, brined the turkey overnight. Made my grandmother Nora's cornbread, stuffing from scratch. Set the table with cloth napkins. I'd ironed at midnight, because my mother said paper ones were tacky. The guests arrived, compliments rolled in. Mrs. Patterson from across the street said it was the best spread she'd seen in 20 years of Briarfield potlucks. My mother stood up. Glass of Chardonnay raised. "Thank you all for coming. I worked so hard to make sure everything was just right." She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't have to. Everyone already assumed she'd done it. I glanced at my father. He was studying his plate like it held the answer to a crossword clue. I tried once. Just once. After the guests had thinned out and it was just family around the table, I said, "Actually, Mom, I planned the menu this year." She set her glass down slowly, the way you'd set down a weapon you wanted everyone to see. "Don't embarrass me in front of guests, Bianca." Guests. We were family. But to Judith Andrews, every room was an audience. My father cleared his throat. "She just meant I know what she meant, Gerald." That was the end of it. I dried the dishes. I put away the centerpieces. I drove home at 11 p.m. to my studio apartment, 14 minutes away, and sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes because I didn't have the energy to walk inside. And the next morning, I texted my mother, "Merry Christmas, Mom." Dinner was beautiful, because correcting Judith Andrews was always more dangerous than being invisible. 2 years ago, I tried setting a boundary. I sat across from my mother at her kitchen table, the oak one she polished every Sunday, and said the words I'd rehearsed in my bathroom mirror for a week. "Mom, I need you to let me handle my own career decisions." She tilted her head, smiled, said nothing for 3 seconds, which is a long time when you're sitting across from Judith Andrews. Then she picked up her phone. Within 72 hours, I received 4 messages. "Aunt Margaret, Bianca, your mother called me crying. She says you're pulling away. Are you okay, Mrs. Patterson? Honey, your mama seems really hurt. She just wants to help. Deacon Harrison, from Grace Baptist. Your mother is a saint, Bianca. Don't break her heart. My father by text. Call your mom. She hasn't slept." 4 people. 4 different conversations. All carrying the same script that my mother had written and distributed like a press release. She never argued with me directly. She never raised her voice. She never slammed a door or threw a plate. That would have been evidence. That would have been something I could point to and say, "See, this is what she does." Instead, she mobilized. She turned every relationship I had into a pressure point. She didn't fight me. She made sure everyone else did. I caved in 3 days, called her, apologized for overreacting. She accepted graciously. She always did. And things went back to what she called normal. Normal meant I organized. She took credit. My father nodded. And the next time I thought about saying something, I remembered those 4 messages and stayed quiet. That was 2 years ago. I hadn't tried again until 6 months before my 30th birthday. I got promoted in January, senior event coordinator at Whitfield & Lowe, the only event planning firm in Briarfield worth its name. 4 years of 70-hour weeks, 53 events, and 0 client complaints. My boss, Dana Kowalski, 33, sharp, no tolerance for nonsense, handed me the title with a handshake and a post-it note that said, "You earned this. Don't let anyone shrink it." I called my mother that evening. I was sitting in my car outside the office, still buzzing, still smiling. "Mom, I got the promotion, senior coordinator." 3 seconds of silence. I counted. "That's nice, sweetheart. It's just party planning though, isn't it?" I stared at my steering wheel. I could hear her rinsing dishes in the background. She hadn't stopped rinsing. "It's event management, Mom. Corporate clients, weddings, galas. I know what it is. I just don't want you to get a big head over something that's basically what you've been doing for the family since you were 14. There it was. The recalibration. The gentle downshift. I'd climbed a rung and she was already pulling the ladder back to where she could reach. I hung up after the usual pleasantries, sat in my car another 10 minutes. My mother wasn't angry about the promotion. She was threatened by it. I'd succeeded in the exact kind of work she'd assigned me as a child, except now someone else was paying me for it, praising me for it, and she couldn't take credit. That terrified her. I didn't know it yet, but she'd already started making calls the following week. Not to me, not to my father, to my clients. Dana closed her office door. That was never good. "Sit down, Bianca." I sat. She slid a printed email across her desk, face up so I could read it. The sender, Juditha. Andrews@gmail.com. The recipient, Mrs. Caroline Mercer Bride. To be 120 guests, our biggest contract of the quarter. My daughter is talented, but she's still young. The email read. I just want to make sure your special day is perfect. If you have any concerns, feel free to reach out to me directly. I know the business inside and out. My throat closed. She called the office too. Dana said last Tuesday, asked the receptionist how you were settling into the new role like you were a child at summer camp. Dana, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. This isn't about you, but I need you to hear me. She leaned forward. This is the second time your mother has contacted a client. If it happens again, I have to pull you off the Mercer account. The Mercer wedding was my proof. My first solo lead on a 6-figure event. If I lost it, I didn't just lose commission. I lost the only evidence that I could do this without Judith Andrews hovering behind me. I'll talk to her, I said. Dana shook her head. I like you, Bianca, but I can't have your family drama in my client emails. I drove home that night gripping the steering wheel hard enough to leave marks on my palms. My mother wasn't trying to destroy my career. That would have required seeing me as a competitor. She was trying to make sure I'd always need her, that every success I had would carry her fingerprints. The leash wasn't iron. It was introductions. That night, I sat on my kitchen floor with a legal pad and drew 2 columns. Column 1. What happens if I confront her? She activates the network. Margaret calls. The church calls. Gerald calls. Mrs. Patterson sends a text. Within a week, I'm the ungrateful daughter again. Within 2 weeks, the story has been rewritten so thoroughly that Judith is the victim and I'm the one who can't handle success. Column 2. What happens if I stay quiet? She keeps calling my clients. Dana pulls me from Mercer. My reputation in Briarfield, a town small enough that everyone knows which pew you sit in, gets filtered through my mother's version of me. I become Judith's daughter, not Bianca Andrews' senior coordinator, just the girl who plans parties because her mother taught her. I looked at both columns. One led to a war I couldn't win in this town. The other led to a cage so comfortable I'd forget it had bars. Then I opened my laptop and typed 2 words into the search bar. Seattle jobs. Briarfield had one event planning firm. Seattle had dozens. Greystone Events had posted a senior coordinator position 3 days ago. The salary was 15% higher. The city was 3,000 miles away. I stared at the listing for 40 minutes. Then I saved it. Didn't apply. Not yet. Because leaving Briarfield didn't just mean leaving my mother. It meant leaving my father who called every Sunday at 7 p.m. to tell me about the crossword he couldn't finish. It meant leaving Dana who'd fought for my promotion. It meant admitting that 30 years in a town where I'd built every holiday table wasn't enough to earn a seat at one. I wasn't trapped by chains. I was trapped by introductions. I called my father on a Tuesday. Mom emailed one of my clients. She told Mrs. Mercer that I'm still learning and offered herself as a go-between. Silence. I could hear the television, some fishing show he watched every evening while my mother read in the next room. She just worries about you, sweetheart. Dad, she emailed my client. That's not worry. That's sabotage. Don't use that word. She's your mother. I pressed my phone against my forehead. Breathed. Dad, do you understand what happens if my boss pulls me from this account? I lose my credibility. I lose the first project I've led on my own. I'll talk to her. You won't. You'll tell her I'm upset and she'll call me to explain why I shouldn't be. He went quiet again. Longer this time. The fishing show played out some reel and cast sequence in the background. Then he said something I'd never heard from him before. Because if she's not in charge, she doesn't know who she is. I stopped breathing. My father, Gerald Andrews, the man who'd spent 35 years handing his wife the steering wheel to everything, had just admitted in 7 words that he knew he'd always known. And what about who I am, Dad? Another pause, the longest one yet. I don't have a good answer for that. We said goodnight. I set the phone on my nightstand and stared at the ceiling. My father had just told me in the gentlest possible way that my mother's identity mattered more than mine, and he meant it as an apology. That night, I opened the Greystone listing again. This time, I clicked apply. In March, I made a decision that felt so small and so enormous at the same time. I planned my own birthday party. My 30th, June 14th, I booked the garden patio at Wren and Ivy, a cafe owned by my college friend Sophie. I designed the menu: bruschetta, grilled shrimp skewers, a lemon cake with buttercream I'd been perfecting for 2 years. I sent invitations to 30 people, colleagues, college friends, neighbors, and my family. My mother, my father, Aunt Margaret. I did not ask my mother for input. I did not send her the menu for approval. I did not call to ask which tablecloth she preferred. For the first time in 30 years, Judith Andrews was a guest, not the director, Margaret told her. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was at my desk reviewing the Mercer seating chart when my phone lit up. Mom, you're throwing a party without telling me. I'm telling you now. You're invited. That's not the same thing. You didn't ask me. It's my birthday, Mom. Her voice dropped half an octave. The register she used when she wanted you to feel the weight of what you'd done. Everything you do reflects on this family. Bianca, what will people think when they find out I wasn't consulted about my own daughter's 30th? They'll think I planned my own birthday. 3 seconds of silence, then a click. She hung up. I sat at my desk for a full minute, phone still in my hand, waiting for the adrenaline to drain. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something I hadn't felt in a very long time. I'd said no to Judith Andrews, and the ceiling didn't fall. Not yet. The next 48 hours told me everything I needed to know. Sophie called me Thursday morning. Bianca, your mom called the cafe. She wanted to change the seating arrangement and asked about the wine list. What did you tell her? I told her the event was booked under your name, and any changes go through you. She didn't like that. By Thursday evening, my mother had added 5 names to the guest list, all from Grace Baptist. Women. She lunched with women who would see her at the head of the table and confirm what Judith needed, confirmed that she was the center. I could have said no. I could have called Sophie and struck the names, but I didn't. Part of me, the part that had spent 16 years arranging chairs, understood something without fully thinking it through. Every person my mother added was another witness, another set of eyes. I didn't know what they'd be witnessing yet, but I let her fill the room. Gerald called Friday. Your mother just wants to feel included. Honey, let her handle the cake. The cake is done, Dad. Just the cake. One thing. Give her that. Dad, why does she need to control my birthday? He sighed. The long defeated sigh of a man who had stopped trying to answer that question decades ago. Just keep the peace, Bianca. Keep the peace, the Andrews family motto, which really meant, keep your mother comfortable, no matter what it costs you. The cake is done, I said again. We hung up. I pulled up Sophie's number and texted, leave the extra guests. Let them come. My mother was adding an audience. She just didn't know what kind of show she was about to put on. The week before the party, my mother went to work. Not the kind of work that involves an office, the kind that involves a phone, a prayer circle, and the ability to rewrite a story before it's even been told. Margaret called Tuesday. Bianca, your mother says you're shutting her out of your birthday. She was up all night. Is that true? She's invited Aunt Margaret. She's sitting at the table. She's welcome. But she says you didn't ask her to help. It's my birthday. I planned it myself. That's the same thing to her. Yes. I thought it is because to Judith Andrews I wasn't asked to help, means I wasn't given control. And I wasn't given control means I don't exist. By Wednesday, Mrs. Patterson had texted Honey. Your mama seems really hurt. Maybe let her help with the party. By Thursday, Deacon Harrison's wife left a voicemail. Judith told the prayer group she feels like she's losing you. We're all praying for your family. 5 people reached out that week, 5 different voices carrying the same message. None of them had asked me what happened. None of them had called to hear my side. They'd all been briefed by Judith Andrews, and the verdict was already in. I answered every message the same way. Mom is invited. She's welcome. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself because I'd been through this before. 2 years ago, when I tried to set a boundary, she'd deployed the same playbook, and I'd crumbled in 3 days. This time, I just let the messages come and didn't pick up the bricks she was throwing. My mother was already performing. The party hadn't even started and she was making sure the audience knew their roles before the curtain went up. The night before my 30th birthday, my father called at 9 p.m. Honey, can you just let your mother help with something? One thing, the flowers maybe. Give her that. Dad, why does she need to control my birthday? I could hear him breathing. The television was off this time. He was sitting somewhere quiet, which meant my mother was in another room and he'd carved out 3 minutes of privacy to make this call. Because if she's not running it, she'll find another way to make it hers. I let that land. He'd said it plainly, more plainly than I'd ever heard from Gerald Andrews. You know she has a problem, Dad. Silence then, very quietly. I know she gave up everything when she had you. Her teaching job, her friends from Danbury. Her mother told her, that's what wives do. And she listened. And somewhere along the way, this family became the only thing she could point to and say, see, that's mine. That's what I built. So I'm a building. You're her proof. That's not the same thing as being her daughter. I pressed my hand against my eyes. This was the most honest thing my father had ever said to me. And the saddest. And what about who I am, Dad? Outside of being her proof. He took a long breath. I don't have a good answer for that either. I asked myself the same question about 10 years ago. Still working on it. We said goodnight. I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. My father had just admitted that Judith Andrews had consumed both of us, and his apology was telling me the truth while doing absolutely nothing to change it. Tomorrow was my birthday, and I had no idea what was coming. So that was the night before my 30th birthday. My mother had called my venue, added her own guests, told half the town I was shutting her out, and my dad basically asked me to hand her the reins one more time. If you've ever had someone tell you to keep the peace when you were the only one bleeding for it, hit that subscribe button, because what happened at that party the next day, I still get chills. The morning of my birthday, my phone rang at 7:15. Not my mother, not Margaret, not Gerald grandma, Nora, my mother's mother, 72, living alone in a cottage outside Burlington, Vermont. A woman I saw once a year at most. Because Judith had spent the last decade slowly cutting the frequency of visits, always with an excuse. Mom's tired. The drive is too long. She's getting forgetful. Nora wasn't forgetful. She was inconvenient. She was the one person in the family who looked at Judith and saw exactly what was happening. Happy birthday, sweet girl. 30. Lord. Her voice was warm and cracked at the edges. Like a mug you've had so long it's become part of your hand. Thanks, Grandma. I heard about the party. Margaret told me. A pause. I also heard your mother isn't taking it well. That's one way to put it. Bianca, listen to me. Your mother? She's my daughter and I love her. But I see what she does. I see it because I did the same thing to her. I went still. I controlled everything. Her clothes, her grades, her friends, because I was terrified of being irrelevant. If I wasn't running the show, who was I? Grandma. She learned it from me. And I learned it from mine. It's a chain, baby, and you're the first one strong enough to break it. I was crying. The only time in this entire story that I cried. Whatever happens today, Nora said, remember you don't owe anyone your freedom. We stayed on the line for another minute without talking, just breathing together. I hung up, wiped my face, put on mascara, and drove to my own birthday party carrying something I'd never had before. Permission from the woman who started it all to end it. Dana was already at Ren and Ivy when I arrived. She was adjusting string lights along the garden trellis, a clipboard tucked under one arm. Birthday girl doesn't set up her own party, she said, without turning around. Old habits, bad habits. She turned, looked at me. Then in that direct way of hers I saw your LinkedIn, Bianca. My stomach dropped. You applied to Greystone Events in Seattle. Dana, I was going to tell you. She held up a hand. You don't owe me an explanation. Greystone is a great firm. Carolyn Marsh runs a tight operation. She paused. I already called her. You what? Told her. You're the real deal. Told her you ran Mercer without a single hitch, despite your mother trying to sabotage it from the outside. Told her, any firm that gets you is lucky. I stared at her. This woman, my boss, my friend, the only person in Briarfield who had seen Judith's interference and named it out loud, had just handed me a lifeline without being asked. Dana, but I want you to leave because you want to Bianca, not because your mother chased you out. That's a different thing. I nodded. I'll decide after tonight. Good. She clipped a final light into place. And listen, whatever happens tonight, your position here is yours, as long as you want it. You hear me, I hear you. She squeezed my arm, went back to the lights. I stood in that garden with string lights blinking above me, and the tables set with the lemon-yellow runners I'd picked out myself. I had a grandmother who'd finally told me the truth, a boss who had my back, and a room about to fill with people. All I needed was for my mother to light the match. Guests started arriving at 6. Sophie had outdone herself with the cafe's garden patio wrought iron tables, pushed together into one long stretch glass votives, flickering along the center. Jasmine climbing the back wall. The menu was on chalkboard stands. Bruschetta shrimp skewers, roasted vegetable crostini, and the lemon buttercream cake sitting under a glass dome near the bar. I was laughing. I was actually laughing. My college friend Tess had flown in from Baltimore. My colleague Marcus brought his wife and a bottle of champagne. Dana sat near the head of the table, keeping one eye on the garden entrance. For the first time in my life, I was at my own birthday party. And I wasn't running it. I wasn't checking the oven. I wasn't counting place settings. I was sitting down. My mother arrived 20 minutes late. She came through the garden gate in a wrap dress. Emerald green fitted statement earrings catching the string lights. The exact color I told her I was wearing when she'd asked last week. She'd had her hair done full makeup. She walked in like she was arriving at an awards show. My baby girl. She opened her arms. 30 already. The hug lasted 4 seconds longer than it needed to. Long enough for 3 people to pull out their phones and take photos. Long enough for everyone at the table to see what a loving mother looked like. My father followed 2 steps behind. Gray sport coat, hands in his pockets. He kissed my cheek and murmured, "Happy birthday, kiddo." I watched my mother choose her seat dead center of the table where she could see and be seen from every angle. She moved 2 place cards without asking. My mother showed up to my birthday, dressed as a better version of me. Dinner started, warm toasts from friends. Marcus raised his glass and said something about how Bianca Andrews could organize a hurricane into a schedule, and everyone laughed. My mother laughed loudest. Then the corrections began. When Tess mentioned my Mercer wedding project, my mother leaned in. "Oh, she almost lost that one. Thank God I called Mrs. Mercer to smooth things over." Dana's fork paused midair. When Sophie brought out the shrimp skewers, my mother tasted one and said, "To the table, not to me. The garlic is a little heavy. I would have used lemon zest." When a neighbor asked about my promotion, my mother answered for me. "She's doing well. I taught her everything she knows about hosting. She gets it from me." Every sentence landed like a small correction. Not an attack. Nothing you could point to and call cruel. Just a steady, precise erosion. A filing down of every edge, until the shape left behind was hers. Dana's hand found mine under the table. She squeezed once hard. I squeezed back. The women from Grace Baptist nodded along. They'd known Judith for years. This was the version of our family they'd been given. The dedicated mother, the talented but learning daughter, the quiet, supportive father. I looked at my father. He was eating his crostini, with the focused attention of a man who had learned years ago that the safest place at Judith Andrews' table was behind a plate. I took a breath, smiled at Marcus's wife, across the table, sipped my wine. She was doing what she always did, taking credit, correcting me, reminding everyone that I existed only in relation to her. But this time, 35 people were watching. And this time, I was paying attention. The plates were cleared. Sophie brought out the lemon cake with a single candle. I'd asked for just one because 30 felt like a parade. And everyone sang. I blew it out, made a wish I'll keep to myself. Then my mother stood up. She tapped her wine glass with a dessert fork. The small bright sound cut through the garden, chatter like a bell. "Can I say a few words?" The table settled. Smiles turned toward her. This was expected. The mother of the birthday girl giving a toast. Normal, warm, what mothers do. I looked at my father. He was staring at his napkin. His jaw was tight. Judith cleared her throat. She was on her 4th glass of Chardonnay. I'd counted. 30 years ago, I gave birth to this girl. I gave up my career. I gave up my teaching position at Danbury Middle School. I gave up my friendships, my hobbies, my life, because that's what mothers do. A few nods around the table. The Grace Baptist women smiled knowingly. I poured everything into this family. Every holiday, every dinner party, every school event I made. Sure, she had the best of everything. Her voice was steady, but the edges were starting to fray. I'd heard this voice before, late at night after too much wine, when the performance cracked and something raw climbed through. And what do I get? A daughter who plans a party behind my back. A daughter who's too good for her own mother now. The smiles around the table began to freeze. Gerald reached for her arm. "Judith," he whispered. "Stop." She pulled away from him without looking down. "Don't touch me, Gerald. Someone in this family needs to tell the truth." My mother looked directly at me. Not at the table, not at the guests. At me. And she said it. Let me be honest, Bianca. We never loved you. Not the way you wanted. Not the way you think you deserve. The garden went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that has weight to it that presses against your chest. Someone set a glass down. The clink was enormous. Judith kept going. Her eyes were glassy. Her hand was shaking around the wine stem, but her voice didn't waver. You were always too much, too independent, too determined to prove you didn't need me. Well, congratulations. You got your wish. I heard Margaret gasp a small, sharp intake of breath, like a door slamming shut somewhere inside her. Gerald had closed his eyes. His hands were flat on the table, pressing down like he was trying to hold something in place. Mrs. Patterson's mouth was open, not in shock and recognition, like she was seeing something she'd suspected for 20 years, but had never wanted to believe. The string lights kept blinking. The jasmine kept smelling sweet. Sophie's lemon cake sat untouched on the center of the table, with one candle sticking out of it at a slight angle. And I sat in my chair at my own birthday party in front of 35 people and felt something I hadn't expected. Not pain, not anger, not the crumbling I'd spent 30 years fearing. I felt a door open. My mother had just said out loud, in front of witnesses, in front of her church friends, in front of my colleagues and my boss, and my neighbors, the thing I had always known but could never prove, and it set me free. I folded my napkin, slowly pressed the crease flat with my thumb. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the patio stone and every head turned. I stood up and I smiled. Not a bitter smile. Not a wounded smile. The kind of smile that comes when something locked finally clicks open. Thank you, Mom. She blinked. Thank you for the honesty. I looked around the table. 35 faces staring at me. Some horrified, some crying, some just frozen forks still in hand as if moving would make the moment real. Thank you all for being here. I mean that. I picked up my bag from the back of my chair, slung it over my shoulder, and I walked out. I didn't run. I didn't slam the gate. I didn't look back. My heels clicked on the wooden deck, then the flagstone path, then the sidewalk. Each step sounded like a period at the end of a sentence I'd been trying to finish for 30 years. Behind me, the silence held for 5 seconds. Then I heard Dana's voice, clear, steady, loud enough to carry across the garden. That woman just told her daughter she never loved her in front of all of us, and Bianca thanked her. I was past the gate by then. I didn't hear what came next. I got to my car, sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel. My phone was already buzzing. I turned it face down on the passenger seat. The engine started. The radio came on mid-song. Something soft. Something acoustic. The kind of music that plays at the end of a movie when the credits roll and the character drives into whatever comes next. I pulled out of the parking lot, and I did not look back. I wasn't there for what happened next. Dana told me later, sitting on my apartment floor while I packed boxes. After I walked out, nobody moved for 5 seconds. 5 full seconds of 35 people staring at a woman, holding a wine glass, and a silence so thick you could hear the candle on the lemon cake guttering in the breeze. Mrs. Patterson was the first to speak. She set her napkin on the table, folded it neatly, the way women of a certain generation do, before they say something that matters, and looked at Judith. Judith, I think you should sit down. My mother laughed. A short, bright, terrified laugh. She's always been dramatic. She'll come back. She always comes back. Nobody laughed with her. One of my colleagues, Marcus, stood up. He touched his wife's shoulder. They walked out without a word. Then Tess, then the couple from 2 blocks over. They left in ones and twos, silent departures that said more than any argument could. Margaret leaned toward Judith. Her voice was low, but Dana was close enough to hear. Judith, you just told your daughter you never loved her in front of 30 people. I didn't mean it like that. Dana stood. She didn't shout. She didn't point. She just looked at my mother and asked the only question that mattered. Then what did you mean? Judith opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Gerald was still sitting, eyes closed, hands pressed flat against the tablecloth. He hadn't moved since my mother started talking. Dana gathered her purse, walked to the gate, stopped. Bianca Andrews is the most competent person I've ever worked with. She deserved better than that. Then, she left. The party was over. The audience had seen the show and the performer had no script left. I drove to my apartment, turned off the lights, sat on the couch in the dark. I didn't cry. I'd done my crying that morning on the phone with my grandmother and I didn't have anything left. What I felt instead was something I'd never felt before. Light. Not the poetic kind, the physical kind. Like I'd been carrying a suitcase packed with someone else's clothes for 30 years, and someone had finally taken it off my back. My mother had said the thing out loud. The thing I'd sensed at every holiday table. The thing I'd felt in every corrected seating chart, every stolen credit, every phone call to my clients. She'd given me the one gift she never intended to give. The truth. And she'd done it in front of witnesses. I couldn't unknow it now. And neither could anyone who'd been at that table. I sat there for 20 minutes. Then I called Grandma Nora. She picked up on the first ring. How did it go? She said she never loved me in front of everyone. Silence. Then, oh Judith. I thanked her and walked out. A long breath. I'm proud of you, sweet girl. We stayed on the line. No words, just the sound of two people breathing 300 miles apart, connected by the same chain that had bound 3 generations. Except now, for the first time, one of us had stepped out of it. I hung up around 10, turned on my phone. 17 missed calls from my mother, my father, Margaret colleagues, neighbors, 17 people who had watched a woman tell her daughter she was unloved, and were now trying to figure out what to do with that information. I set the phone on the nightstand face down. By morning, that number would triple. I woke at 7:00 a.m. The screen said 53. I sat up in bed, stared at the number scrolled. My mother, 18 calls. I played the voicemails in order. Call me back right now, Bianca. This is ridiculous. I didn't mean it. You know I didn't. You're blowing this out of proportion. How dare you leave like that? You humiliated me in front of my friends. People are going to talk. Do you understand that? People are going to talk about us. Everyone is calling me. Everyone. What am I supposed to tell them? The arc was textbook. Demand, denial, deflection. Victimhood, panic. 5 stages of a narcissistic collapse delivered in voicemail form. Gerald, 12 calls. His messages were shorter. Please call your mother, honey. She's falling apart. And then at 4 a.m., a text separate from the voicemails, typed carefully in the way my father typed everything, one finger at a time. I'm sorry. I should have been your father first. I stared at that text for a long time. Margaret, 8 calls. Bianca, this has gone too far. Your mother is the victim here. You need to come home and apologize. Colleagues and friends, 15 calls. Tess, I'm so sorry, B. That was the worst thing I've ever seen at a dinner table. Dana, you okay? Call me when you're ready. I've got your back. I played every voicemail, read every text, then I deleted them. All of them except my father's. I saved that one. In a folder I named evidence. Not for court, for myself. For the days when I'd wonder if I'd made the right call. 53 calls. Not one of them started with, "Are you okay?" I called Dana at 8 a.m. "I'm taking the Seattle job." "You sure?" "Yes." Not because of last night. I looked out my kitchen window. The maple tree in the parking lot was just starting to leaf out. That soft green that only lasts a week before it thickens into something permanent. Last night didn't make me decide, Dana. It gave me permission to stop pretending I hadn't already decided. She was quiet for a moment. Then Carolyn Marsh is expecting your call. I gave her your number last week. You knew I hoped. I hung up. Sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, the same one I'd used to draw those 2 columns months ago, and wrote a list. Email Greystone. Accept the offer. Notify my landlord. 30-day clause in the lease. Pack. I owned less than I thought. 2 suitcases, 4 boxes, a set of cast iron skillets my grandmother Nora had given me when I moved out at 23. I didn't call Judith. I didn't call Gerald. I didn't call Margaret. I didn't owe an explanation. My mother gave me one in front of 35 people. By noon, I'd accepted the Greystone offer, emailed my landlord, and started wrapping dishes in newspaper. By 3, I dropped off a resignation letter at Whitfield and Lowe. Dana signed it, hugged me in the parking lot, said nothing because nothing needed to be said. By 6, I was sitting in a half-empty apartment, eating takeout pad thai. And for the first time in my adult life, my phone was silent. Not because nobody was calling, because I'd turned it off. And the silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like a room with the windows open for the first time. My mother spent the next week doing what she did best, managing the narrative. Dana told me the details later pieced together from town gossip and a few candid conversations with people who'd been at the party. Judith called every guest, every single one. Her version of events had been polished down to a smooth, presentable stone. I'd had too much wine. I didn't mean what I said. Bianca misunderstood me. She's always been sensitive. It didn't work. Mrs. Patterson, who had sat across from my mother at Grace Baptist potlucks for 2 decades, told her plainly, "Judith, I heard what you said. We all did. Alcohol doesn't put words in your mouth. It takes the filter off." The Women's Charitable League met the following Thursday. Judith was not asked to chair. She was not asked to speak. She sat in the 3rd row while someone else read the minutes she'd written for 11 years. By the end of the 2nd week, the church grapevine, the one Judith had spent a lifetime cultivating, had turned. She wasn't being condemned. It was worse than that. She was being pitied. Poor Judith. Can you imagine saying that to your own child? For a woman who had built her entire identity on being the center of every room, pity was the one thing she couldn't metabolize. Pity meant she was no longer leading the conversation. She was the subject of it. Margaret called me once more during that period. Her voice was different this time. Quieter, less certain. "Bianca, I think maybe I've been wrong about some things." I didn't answer right away. "What changed, Aunt Margaret?" She turned on me after the brunch nobody came to. She looked at me and said, "This is your fault. You should have called them. Welcome to my world." I agreed to meet my father one time before I left. Not at the house. I couldn't walk through that front door again. Not because of hatred, but because every inch of that house was a museum of who I used to be. The hallway where I'd ironed napkins at midnight. The kitchen where I'd been told not to embarrass her in front of guests. We met at the diner on Elm Street. The one with the cracked vinyl booths and the coffee that tastes like it was brewed during the Clinton administration. He looked old, not tired old, like the last 2 weeks had added 5 years. "Your mother wants me to bring you home," he said. "I'm not coming home, Dad. I'm moving to Seattle." His coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. Seattle. That's 3,000 miles. That's the point. He set the cup down, wrapped both hands around it like he was holding something together. "When Friday?" He nodded. Kept nodding. The way people do when they're trying to turn a reaction into an acceptance. Then his eyes filled. I'd seen my father frustrated. I'd seen him resigned. I'd never seen him cry. "I failed you, Bianca." "Dad, I did. I watched her do this for years. And I told myself it was just how she was, that it wasn't that bad, that you'd be fine. I am fine. You're leaving." I reached across the table and put my hand over his. "I love you, Dad, but I can't keep being the person who holds this family together while it breaks me." He squeezed my hand, didn't let go for a long time. "If you call me," I said, "call me for yourself, not for her. I will. I'm not punishing you, Dad. I'm saving myself." He nodded. This time he meant it. Friday, 6 a.m., June 21st. My car was packed. 2 suitcases in the trunk, 4 boxes in the back seat. Grandma Nora's cast iron skillets wrapped in dish towels on the passenger floor. Dana was standing outside Ren and Ivy when I pulled up to say goodbye. She was holding a travel mug of coffee and a small white envelope. "Don't open it until Portland," she said. I hugged her. She held on tight. "Go be somebody's first call," she said into my shoulder. Not their backup plan. I got in the car, turned the key, pulled onto Main Street. Briarfield at 6 a.m. is a different town. No one on the sidewalks. The bakery not yet open. The church steeple catching the first light like it was reaching for something. I drove past my parents' house without slowing down. The lights were on in the living room. My mother was awake. I don't know if she saw my car. I don't know if she was watching the street, waiting for me to pull in the driveway the way I always did. Early morning, ready to help, ready to set up whatever table she needed set. I didn't stop. The town limit sign passed. Then the on-ramp. Then the highway stretched out flat and long in front of me, the morning sun making the asphalt shimmer. I opened Dana's envelope at a rest stop outside Hartford. Inside was a post-it note in her handwriting. She never deserved you. Caroline does go. 800 miles in. My phone buzzed. Not my mother, not my father. A text from Carolyn Marsh, director of Greystone Events. Welcome aboard, Bianca. We start Monday. I set the phone down, merged back onto the highway. 3,000 miles. And for the first time, every single one of them was mine. I drove 3,000 miles from the woman who told 35 people she never loved me. And right now, sitting here telling you this, I still don't regret it. If you've ever been someone's organizer, someone's fixer, someone's proof that their sacrifice was worth it and they never once said thank you, drop a comment. Tell me your story, because you matter. And if you're still watching the fallout back in Briarfield, it was just getting started. Dana kept me updated during those first weeks. Not because I asked I hadn't, but because she understood that leaving a story mid-chapter is its own kind of torture. 2 weeks after the party, Judith Andrews was gently encouraged to step back from her role as vice chair of the Women's Charitable League. Nobody used the word removed. Nobody had to. The invitation to chair the fall fundraiser went to someone else without explanation, and Judith showed up to the next meeting and sat in the third row for the first time in 11 years. Her social circle contracted like a muscle clamping down. Invitations stopped arriving. When she went to the farmer's market, the conversation she walked into grew shorter, not cold polite. The careful politeness of people who had seen something they couldn't unsee. Mrs. Patterson still waved, but she didn't stop to talk. She didn't invite Judith for iced tea on the porch the way she'd done every other Thursday for a decade. Judith tried to host a brunch, a recovery brunch. That was Dana's term. She invited 10 women. 3 showed up. They ate quiche and talked about the weather, and nobody mentioned Bianca. The cruelest part, and I say this without satisfaction, is that nobody punished my mother. Nobody confronted her. Nobody gave her the dramatic showdown she was built to handle. They just withdrew quietly, the way people do when they realize the person they've been admiring has been performing the whole time. For a narcissist, that silence is worse than a fight. A fight has energy, an opponent, a narrative. Silence has nothing, just an empty third row and a quiche. Nobody compliments. My father, meanwhile, started going fishing on Saturday mornings. Alone. For the first time in 35 years, Gerald Andrews did something without asking Judith first. Margaret called me in early July. I was unpacking the last of my boxes in a studio apartment in Capitol Hill, Seattle. It was small, one window facing an alley, a kitchen counter that doubled as a desk, and a fire escape. I was already imagining a potted plant for Bianca. Her voice was stripped of the usual urgency. No crisis in it. No assignment. I owe you an apology. I sat on the edge of my bed. Why now? Because after that night I saw it. The brunch. The one nobody came to. She turned to me and said, "This is your fault, Margaret. You should have called them." And I thought, she's doing it to me now. She's been doing it to me for 30 years. I know. I know that now. A pause. I could hear her breathing. And for the first time, it didn't sound like she was reading from a script. I've been her messenger since before you were born. She calls me when she needs someone delivered a guilt trip, and I always picked up the phone. And now I told her I needed space. She called me selfish. I almost laughed. Almost. Sounds familiar. I'm sorry, Bianca. I'm sorry it took me this long. I leaned against the wall. Outside my one window, a couple was arguing about parking in the alley. Normal sounds. Stranger sounds. The beautiful noise of a life that had nothing to do with Judith Andrews. Call me again in a month, Aunt Margaret. For you, not for her. I will. We hung up. I went back to unpacking. Found Grandma Nora's cast iron skillet at the bottom of a box wrapped in the dish towel I'd used since college. I set it on the stove, seasoned it, made eggs. Some inheritances are worth keeping. Seattle wasn't paradise. I want to be honest about that. My first week at Greystone Events, I ate dinner alone every night. Soup from a can, rice, and whatever vegetables were on sale. My studio had a draft from the window that I covered with a towel until I could afford weather stripping. I didn't have friends here. I didn't have a Sunday phone call. I flinched every time my phone rang, a reflex I hadn't noticed until there was no one calling. But there were mornings. My first solo event at Greystone was a corporate mixer for a tech nonprofit, 60 guests rooftop venue, live string duo. Carolyn Marsh walked me through the space and introduced me to the client. This is Bianca Andrews, our new senior coordinator. 4 words, no qualifier. No, she's still learning. No, she gets it from her mother. Just my name and a job I'd earned. The event went off without a single issue. Afterward, the client shook my hand and said, "Where have you been hiding?" I smiled. Connecticut. I started therapy in August. A woman named Dr. Yun with a calm office and a clock that ticked louder than her questions. In our second session, she asked me something no one had ever asked. What do you want, Bianca? Not what you're supposed to want. Not what someone else needs you to want. What do you want? I cried. Because the question was so simple, and I'd never once been given the space to answer it. I want to be seen, I said. By someone who isn't keeping score. She wrote that down, and for the first time in my life, a truth I spoke out loud wasn't used against me. Freedom doesn't feel like flying. It feels like learning to breathe without asking permission. The text came on a Wednesday, in late July, 6 weeks after I'd left. Gerald Andrews, no preamble. No. Your mother wants me to say just I went to the lake today, caught 2 trout. Thought you'd want to know. I stared at my phone for a full minute. In 30 years, my father had never sent me a message that wasn't routed through Judith. Every call was prompted. Every visit was scheduled around her calendar. Every I love you had her fingerprints on it. This was just fish, and it was the most honest thing he'd ever sent me. I typed back, "That sounds nice, Dad. Send me a photo." 2 minutes later, a picture appeared. My father standing next to a lake. I didn't recognize, holding up a trout with both hands, grinning in a way I hadn't seen since I was a kid. He was wearing a flannel shirt I'd never seen before. Not one my mother would have picked. Too old, too wrinkled, too comfortable. He looked happy. I saved the photo, named the file Dad Fishing July. I didn't ask about my mother. He didn't mention her. For the first time, the space between us wasn't filled with Judith Andrews' instructions. It was just a father and a daughter 3,000 miles apart sharing a picture of a fish. We texted 3 more times that week about trout, about the weather in Seattle, about a crossword clue he couldn't figure out. 7 letters, Old Norse for freedom. Freely, I texted back. You always were the smart one, he replied. My mother called Gerald 13 times that evening, asking who he was texting. I know because he told me the next day, along with what he'd said to her. Nobody important. Some things don't change, but some people start to. The letter arrived in September. A real envelope, cream-colored, my mother's handwriting slanting across the front. The return address in Briarfield, written in her careful cursive. I'd moved to a bigger apartment by then, a 1-bedroom in Fremont with a balcony that faced a bakery. I could smell croissants at 6 a.m. It was the most beautiful alarm clock I'd ever had. I opened the letter at my kitchen table. 2 pages, front and back. The first page and a half was what I expected. I was stressed that night. I'd had too much wine. You know I don't handle Chardonnay well. You planned the party without telling me, and I felt excluded. If you had just let me help, none of this would have happened. Explanation. Justification. A thin vein of blame, running through every paragraph, like a hairline crack in porcelain. Then, the last 3 lines. I don't sleep well anymore. The house is quiet. I miss you. 3 sentences, and I believed every one of them. My mother missed me. I didn't doubt that, but she missed the version of me that said yes. The version that ironed napkins at midnight and called afterward to say the dinner was beautiful. The version that never corrected her in front of guests. The version that let her stand at the center of every room and hold the light. That version doesn't exist anymore. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it, slid it back into the envelope, and put it in my nightstand drawer. I didn't respond. Not that day. I wanted to sit with it. I wanted to make sure that when I answered, if I answered, it came from the woman I was becoming, not the girl I used to be. I wrote back in October, 1 page front only. I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee and Grandma Nora's voice in my head. You don't owe anyone your freedom. And I wrote what I meant. Mom, I read your letter. I believe you miss me, but missing someone isn't the same as loving them. You told 35 people you never loved me. I'm not asking you to take it back. I'm asking you to sit with it, to think about what made you say it and what it cost. Not me, but you. If you want to talk to me, here are the conditions. No calling my workplace. No sending Margaret or Dad as messengers. No telling the church group your version before I've heard yours. Call me directly. Speak to me. Not about me. I'm not closing the door, Mom. I'm telling you which door to use. I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. I signed it, sealed it, walked it to the mailbox on the corner of my street, the blue one next to the bakery, and dropped it in. Then I went to work. 4 weeks passed. No response, no call, no text. I checked the mailbox every day for the first week, then every other day, then stopped. I'd said what I needed to say. Her silence was her answer, and I was learning to be okay with answers that didn't come wrapped in resolution. Then, on a Tuesday evening in November, a text appeared on my phone. Judith Andrews. 6 words. I read it. I don't agree with everything, but I read it. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a breakthrough. It wasn't the movie ending where the mother sees the light and the music swells. It was a beginning. And beginnings are messy. It's December now, 6 months since that birthday party. I'm standing in a hotel ballroom in downtown Seattle, adjusting a centerpiece for a charity gala that Greystone has been planning for 3 months. 70 tables, 400 guests, a live jazz quartet warming up behind a silk curtain. The kind of event I used to dream about while ironing napkins in my mother's kitchen at midnight. My phone buzzes. I glance at the screen. Gerald Andrews. I pick up. Hey honey, I just wanted to say good luck tonight. A pause. Your mother didn't ask me to call. I smile. Thanks, Dad. Caught another trout last weekend. A big one. Send me a picture later. I will. Love you, kiddo. Love you too. I hang up. Set the phone in my pocket. Look around the ballroom. The tables are set. The candles are lit. The flowers are exactly where they should be. Peonies and eucalyptus, soft, white, and green. I picked them myself. Nobody corrected me. Nobody took credit. Nobody told me the garlic was too heavy, or the napkins looked cheap. My name is on the program. Bianca Andrews, Senior Event Coordinator, Greystone Events. Just my name. Nobody else's. I still flinch sometimes when my phone rings. I still have Thursday sessions with Dr. Yun. I still keep my mother's letter in a drawer and my father's fishing photos in a folder. I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm not organizing someone else's version of a perfect life. But tonight, this gala, these 400 chairs, these 70 tables, these flowers I chose. This is mine. My mother told 35 people she never loved me. She meant it as a weapon, but it was the most honest thing she ever gave me. And I used it not to destroy her, to finally build myself. That's my story. My name is Bianca Andrews. I'm 30 years old. I live in Seattle. And for the first time in my life, my phone doesn't make me flinch. If you've ever walked away from a table where your chair was always the smallest, I see you. Drop a comment and tell me, did you stay or did you go? And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. There are more stories like mine in the description below. I'll see you in the next. If you really like our videos, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.